Roy Sullivan, a U.S. park ranger who holds a record nobody wants. He was struck by lightning 7 times and survived every single one. The odds of being struck by lightning once in your lifetime are about 1 in 15,000. The odds of being struck 7 times? Astronomically impossible. Yet it happened. The first strike was in 1942. He lost a toenail. The second was in 1969. His eyebrows were burned off. Third strike in 1970, his shoulder was seared. Fourth in 1972, his hair caught fire. Fifth in 1973, another hair fire and leg burns. Sixth in 1976, his ankle was injured. And the seventh in 1977, he suffered chest and stomach burns. After the fourth strike, he started carrying a can of water with him everywhere in case his hair caught fire again. Which it did. 3 more times. Roy earned the nickname Human Lightning Rod and a place in the Guinness Book of World Records. He survived what should have killed him 7 times over. Some people said he was cursed. Others said he was blessed. Either way, Roy Sullivan proved that sometimes the universe just can't kill you. Aaron Ralston. His story became the movie 127 Hours. But the real version is even more brutal. In April 2003, Aaron was hiking alone in a remote Utah canyon. While climbing, an 800-pound boulder shifted and pinned his right arm against the canyon wall. He was completely stuck, and nobody knew where he was. He tried everything, chipping away at the boulder with a cheap multi-tool, rigging pulley systems. Nothing worked. Days passed. His water ran out. He started drinking his own urine to stay alive. By day 5, he knew he was going to die there. So he carved his name, date of birth, and what he thought would be his date of death into the canyon wall. He recorded goodbye messages to his family on his camcorder. Then, on day 6, he had a vision. He saw a future version of himself as a father holding a child. And he realized if he wanted that future, he had to do the unthinkable. He broke his own arm bones by torquing them against the boulder. Then, using a dull pocket knife, he spent over an hour cutting through muscle, tendons, and nerves. He amputated his own arm, while fully conscious, with no anesthetic. After freeing himself, he rappelled down a 65-foot cliff with one arm, then hiked 6 miles through the desert before finally finding help. He survived 127 hours trapped with no food and minimal water. And he had the mental strength to do what most people couldn't even imagine. Aaron still climbs today, with a prosthetic arm, because some people simply refuse to quit. Poon Lim. During World War II. In November 1942, a British merchant ship called the SS Ben Lomond was torpedoed by a German U-boat in the Atlantic Ocean. The ship sank in 2 minutes. Out of 55 crew members, only 1 survived. A Chinese sailor named Poon Lim. Poon managed to grab a life raft before the ship went down. The raft had some basic supplies. A few tins of biscuits, some water, chocolate, flares. Enough to last maybe 2 weeks if he rationed carefully. 2 weeks passed. No rescue. A month passed. Still nothing. His supplies ran out. He was alone on the Atlantic Ocean with no food, no water, and no hope of rescue. But Poon refused to die. He collected rainwater in a canvas tarp. He fashioned a fishing hook from a spring in his flashlight and used hemp rope from the raft to make a fishing line. He caught small fish. Then he used those fish as bait to catch bigger fish. He even caught a shark by hand and killed it with a jug of water. He exercised twice a day to keep his strength up. He kept a mental calendar by counting sunrises. He never gave up. Twice, ships passed him. He fired his flares. Both ships ignored him. One was a freighter that simply sailed away. The other was a German patrol boat that looked directly at him and kept going. Finally, on April 5, 1943, after 133 days alone at sea, Brazilian fishermen spotted him and pulled him to shore. He had drifted over 2,000 miles. He'd lost significant weight but was otherwise in remarkable condition. Poon Lim holds the world record for longest time survived alone on a life raft. A record he said he hoped no one would ever break. Because to break it, you'd have to suffer even longer than he did. Anatoly Bugorsky. On July 13, 1978, Anatoly Bugorsky, a Soviet scientist, was working on the U-70 synchrotron particle accelerator near Moscow. This machine fires proton beams at nearly the speed of light. On that day, the machine malfunctioned. Safety protocols failed. Anatoly leaned over to check a piece of equipment, and the beam fired directly through his head. The proton beam entered the back of his skull, passed through his brain, and exited through his nose. He saw a flash brighter than 1,000 suns but felt no pain. He should have died instantly. The radiation dose was estimated at 200,000 to 300,000 Röntgens. For context, 500 Röntgens is lethal to humans. He received doses hundreds of times higher than that. But Anatoly didn't die. He finished his shift, went home, and only went to the hospital the next day when his face started swelling. Doctors couldn't believe he was still alive. They prepared for him to die within days. He didn't die. The left side of his face was paralyzed. He lost hearing in his left ear. The skin where the beam entered and exited peeled off completely. But he survived. Even more incredibly, his mental faculties remained intact. He completed his PhD. He continued working in physics. He got married and had a son. Anatoly Bugorsky is the only person in history to be struck by a particle accelerator beam and live. Doctors still don't fully understand how he survived. But he's still alive today, decades later, as living proof that the human body can endure the unendurable. Harrison O'Keefe. On May 26, 2013, Harrison was the cook on a tugboat off the coast of Nigeria. Around 4:30 a.m., while most of the crew was sleeping, the boat suddenly capsized and sank. Harrison woke up to water flooding his cabin. In seconds, the boat flipped completely upside down and sank 100 feet to the ocean floor. 11 crew members drowned. Harrison was trapped. But by sheer luck, he ended up in a 4-foot-high air pocket in the engineer's bathroom. The boat had sunk upside down, trapping a small bubble of air. That air pocket was the only thing keeping him alive. He was 100 feet underwater, in complete darkness. The cold water was slowly rising. He was surrounded by the bodies of his crewmates floating in the flooded corridors. He had no food, no water, and nobody knew he was alive. For 3 days, Harrison sat in that 4-foot space. He listened to the sounds of fish eating the bodies of his friends. He felt the freezing water slowly creeping higher. He prayed. He thought about his wife and 2-year-old son. And he waited to die. On the 3rd day, a rescue team arrived. But they weren't looking for survivors. They were there to recover bodies. As a diver swam through the wreckage with his camera, Harrison saw the light. He reached out and grabbed the diver's hand. The diver screamed in terror. He thought he'd just been grabbed by a corpse. Then he realized Harrison was alive. The rescue team brought Harrison to the surface. He had been underwater in pitch darkness for 60 hours. Doctors said he shouldn't have survived. The air pocket should have run out of oxygen. The cold should have killed him. The psychological trauma alone should have driven him insane. But Harrison O'Keefe walked out of that hospital. He survived 3 days in a submerged metal tomb at the bottom of the ocean. And he lived to tell the tale. Julianne Koepke. On December 24, 1971, Christmas Eve, 17-year-old Julianne Koepke and her mother boarded a flight from Lima, Peru, heading home for the holidays. 40 minutes into the flight, the plane flew directly into a massive thunderstorm. Lightning struck the aircraft. The right wing exploded. The plane broke apart in midair at 10,000 feet. Julianne was still strapped to her seat as she fell 2 miles through the sky. She was conscious. She watched the jungle canopy rushing up toward her. She thought, this is it. I'm going to die. But she didn't die. The seat hit thick jungle canopy, which slowed her fall just enough. She crashed through layers of trees and vines and landed in the rainforest. Somehow, she was alive. She woke up the next morning with a broken collarbone, a torn ligament in her knee, deep cuts all over her body, and one eye swollen shut. She was alone in the Peruvian Amazon rainforest. No supplies, no shoes, wearing only a mini dress. All 91 other people on the plane were dead. Julianne found her mother's body still strapped to her seat. But she couldn't stay. She had to find help. Julianne's father was a biologist who had taught her jungle survival. She remembered his advice: follow water downstream. Rivers lead to civilization. For 10 days she walked through the jungle. She waded through rivers infested with piranhas and crocodiles. Maggots infested her wounds. She had no food except for a bag of candy she found in the wreckage. She drank river water and kept moving. On day 10, she found a small boat and a shelter used by loggers. She waited there. The next day, local workers arrived and found her. They couldn't believe she was alive. Julianne Coep survived a 2-mile fall from an exploding airplane, then survived 10 days alone in one of the most dangerous environments on Earth. She was 17 years old, and she never gave up. Today, she's a librarian in Germany, the sole survivor of Lanza Flight 508. Vesna Vulovic. This is the most impossible survival story of all time. On January 26, 1972, Vesna was a 22-year-old flight attendant working on JAT Yugoslav Airlines Flight 367, flying from Copenhagen to Belgrade. At 33,330 feet, a bomb hidden in the cargo hold exploded. The plane disintegrated in midair. All 28 people on board were killed instantly, except one, Vesna Vulovic. She fell 33,330 feet. That's over 6 miles. Falling at terminal velocity, she was traveling at approximately 200 miles per hour when she hit the ground. She had no parachute, no safety equipment, nothing to slow her fall. Just gravity and the laws of physics, both of which said she should be dead. But several miracles happened simultaneously. First, she was trapped inside a section of the fuselage as it fell, which provided some protection. Second, the wreckage landed on a heavily forested, snow-covered mountain slope, which cushioned the impact slightly. Third, a villager who was a World War II medic found her within minutes and kept her alive until help arrived. Vesna was in a coma for 27 days. When she woke up, she was temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. She had a fractured skull, 3 broken vertebrae, 2 broken legs, and 3 broken ribs. Doctors said she would never walk again. But Vesna proved them wrong. After months of painful rehabilitation, she walked out of the hospital. She even returned to work for the same airline, though she worked desk jobs instead of flying. Vesna Vulovic holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute. A record that will likely never be broken, because to break it, someone would have to fall from even higher and survive, which is statistically impossible. She lived until 2016, passing away peacefully at age 66. She survived the unsurvivable and lived for 44 more years to tell the story. Which survival story shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments.